All right, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are watching us from. This is the Confab on Esteem Radio Vision. We are located at Obukun Avenue in Elisha, Ocean State, Nigeria. Today on the Confab, we focus on three stories that raise hard questions about governance, about priorities, and the lived realities in Nigeria, or the lived realities of Nigerians. First, a troubling revelation from the Medical and Dental Council of Nigeria. About 2,000 newly qualified doctors are shut out of housemanship placements every year. At a time when Nigeria is losing medical professionals in droves, we are producing doctors. We are producing doctors. The system itself cannot absorb. Is this poor planning, weak funding, or a deeper policy contradiction in our health sector? This is one of the questions that a lot of people are asking. Then, away from that, the economy. A pro-government group says food prices are easing under President Tinubu's reforms. The site improved production and supply conditions, but many Nigerians listening this morning or this afternoon may be asking a very simple question. Where is the relief? Are reforms working faster on paper down in the market, or is something blocking the benefit from reaching ordinary consumers? And then finally, a story that has sparked strong emotions across the country. A 60-year-old woman sentenced to 2 years in prison for stealing a power bank and chin-chin. Although we are still going to give you details to the story, it forces us to confront uncomfortable issues, justice versus compassion, the letter of law versus social realities, and how the system treats the poor compared to the powerful. These are not just some stories, they are not just headlines, they are mirrors reflecting the state of our country today. So let's dig into them. I still remain Chidinma Abel, and I have with me
Ohunayo, Ajiboye.
You are welcome, Ohunayo, Ajiboye.
Thank you very much, Chidinma.
Okay, I don't even know which story to start with, but then
let's start with the first story.
Okay, let's just start with this first story, as my colleague has said. 2,000 doctors shut out of housemanship yearly. MDCN tells Senate. But you know, it's this thing, I don't know, I'm not just the only one asking the question. A lot of Nigerians asking. You know, the government have been complaining about the doctors leaving Nigeria, to outside the country to practice. And a lot of them, after studying in Nigeria, they will just relocate. And some of them don't even want to study medicine in Nigeria. I've seen a lot of them.
Obvious reasons.
Yes, they want to travel out to study medicine and all of that. And we have seen that over there, doctors enjoy so much. The job there is very, very lucrative, unlike here. And then the government, I think one of these, is it the Confab, one of the episodes of the Confab, we discussed when the government were saying the doctors shouldn't be traveling abroad, they should stay in Nigeria, that Nigeria needs their services. Why should they travel out there? So now we are having this story saying that about 2,000 doctors shut out of housemanship yearly. MDCN is telling the Senate. Now, I don't know where the problem is coming from. Is it the government? You don't want these people to travel out. And here they are having them over 2,000 doctors shut out of housemanship. So I don't know, should the government still be blaming the doctors when they don't have provision, when they don't have enough provision for these doctors? They can't even accommodate all of them.
Well, Chidinma, this is the thing. What this is pointing to is a problem within the medical system, and also the fact that the government probably now the government is starting to take medical practitioners and medical graduates serious, but the government didn't really take them serious at the beginning, because there should have been a pipeline, so to say, for our medical graduates to show themselves, to showcase what they can do. But unfortunately, what we had in Nigeria was that a professional brain drain, because our doctors will graduate and they will go abroad to seek for greener pastures, because there's no assurance of getting a good job here, and even when they get the job, they are overworked, overstressed, and underpaid. So all this coming together is what makes them seek greener pastures overseas. Now look at the fact that Dr. Fatima Kiari, Registrar of the Council, that's MDCN, was disclosing on Friday in Abuja, and she's saying that 6,000 medical doctors graduate annually from accredited medical schools across the country. The centralized housemanship system, also known as CHS, can only absorb 4,000.
Out of the 6,000 yearly.
So what do you expect the remaining 2,000 to do? Are they going to sit on their, there was a trend on social media, was it last year or 2 years ago, when Nigerian graduates were like, this is what I studied, but this is what I'm doing. And you will see many medical graduates who said, this is what I studied, what I'm doing. You see them, POS agents. Some of them doing tiling, POP installation in buildings. Medical graduates that should be contributing to the healthcare sector of this nation. But because of such systems in place, because of such structures, that is not going to benefit the country in any way, and yet it is still being maintained instead of being pulled down and rebuilt or restructured. Because of these particular same systems and structures, those doctors are not functioning in what they studied, where they should have functioned best. Rather, they are doing other things in order to survive. You now want to tell me that if those medical graduates get an opportunity to leave this country for better pasture, what form of loyalty or patriotism do you expect for them? Has the country shown them any sympathy at all? Has the country given them any consideration at all that will make them show loyalty or patriotism to the country? So it's all a game of survival. It's about if the government is actually serious. If the government is serious, it will review this, and then a solution will be provided.
Yes, because why should about 6,000 provision be made for them to, study medicine?
We have 6,000
and at the end of the day, it's only 4,000 that
this is the funny thing, Chidinma. The government could do enough research to know that 6,000 medical graduates graduate every year. And I can tell you that it's more than 6,000 every year. When you look at how many universities, private, public, state-owned, individual-owned universities, colleges of health, we have many more medical graduates. It's more than 6,000, but the provision can only accommodate 4,000 every year. I mean, it's not logical.
So what are we going to call this? Is this systemic failure or whatever?
It is. It is a systemic failure. It's a government failure, and it's also it's a failure on the part of the MDC and themselves, because this is something. The reason why
they are the victim. They are the victim, and you say it's also
a failure on their part, because they have a leadership for a reason, and their leadership should have raised alarm and should have fought for their rights and their freedom. But what we have, unfortunately, is this kind of drama where instead of taking the fight to the government and pushing the government to do the needful.
But that's why they are the
same. That's why they are now coming out now.
Okay.
That's why they are coming out now. It has gotten to a stage where they can no longer bear it. They shouldn't have allowed it to get to this stage.
Okay, now let's talk about the government's claim about brain drain.
Can
government genuinely claim it is fighting brain drain when young doctors are forced to wait indefinitely for housemanship or leave the country? Is this policy-induced migration?
You are asking if it is induced. Of course it is. It is induced, not deliberately on the government's part, but but because of the government's inaction, the government's failure to actually regulate and do things the right way. That's why we have the brain drain in the nation. The economical situation, the economic status of the country, the fact that our federal institutions of learning have become something else nowadays. The curriculum is outdated. Those are many reasons. And like I said, the buck all stops at the government, federal government, state government, whatever. They are all government. So this is a systemic failure on the part of the government, and the government has no right to say it's fighting brain drain when we keep getting news like this.
So what's the solution? What can the government do to be able to accommodate this 6,000 graduates?
Well,
or even more?
I like to be realistic when I offer solutions, and I prefer solutions to these kind of things. It's not going to be solved easily. It's not going to be solved in 2026, and it might not even be solved in 2027. But if the government takes efforts and the government actually utilizes political will, this thing can be solved step by step. Step 1, reevaluate the CHS. Reevaluate the CHS. That is the centralized system that exists. That's the centralized housemanship system. Reevaluate it. You know, what are the qualifications? I mean, reevaluate it and audit it. Audit it, because you discover that some of the reasons why this thing is put in place is because certain individuals have been, you know, they have been engaging in nepotism and all forms of corruption, cutting out people that are actually qualified to get the housemanship. That's one of the reasons why you will see that a lot of qualified graduates are being denied the opportunity to get their housemanship on time. And then you now have foreign hospitals calling on them, are like, oh, you're so brilliant, we need you, we want you to come in, and they will go. Don't tell me about patriotism when I'm trying to survive, when I'm trying to feed my family. Don't tell me about patriotism when I've been frustrated year in, year out, waiting indefinitely for you to call me up for housemanship, and you don't. You can't lecture me about patriotism. You can't tell me that I'm draining the brains of the country. The country is draining my brain in that situation. So that's what the government needs to do. They have to review the CHS system. They have to audit it. And then they have to come up with a much better integrated plan for housemanship.
All right, thank you so much. But then, because of our time, we just move to the very next story here. We have food prices easing under Tinubu's reforms. And this is coming from a group that said food prices easing under Tinubu's reforms. A group known as Tinubu Media Force says food prices are gradually easing across major markets nationwide, citing the impact of reforms under President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's renewed hope agenda. The very first question that comes to mind is the name of the group. Tinubu Media Force says, you know, somebody would have said if it were a kind of another name entirely. But with this name, Tinubu, you know, it has raised questions. Why Tinubu? It should have come from the opposition if it were to be from the opposition saying that...
you know, the kind of opposition we practice in Nigeria is to always stand against what the ruling party is doing, whether good or bad. Yeah,
exactly.
So there's that side of it. So it doesn't necessarily have to come from the opposition. It should come from the people on ground, the common people. It should come from the people in the streets. It should come from the woman that's selling foodstuff when you go to buy from her. Exactly. And you ask her, oh, why is this thing cheap? And she tells you, prices are easing. But I don't think that's been my experience. And I've been to markets twice this week. So I don't know what they are talking about. I don't know what Tinubu Media Force is talking about. And I'm pretty sure that the viewers at home will also agree. I don't know, unless there's anybody. Please, you can come down in the comment section and let us know the markets you've been to, where food prices and, you know, every other essentials have dropped. I would like to patronize that market, because why wouldn't I? By now, it should have been viral all over Nigeria. If indeed what they are saying is actually true. It should have gone viral all over Nigeria.
The statement
it appears more like
motivated.
propaganda, like
Yes.
a political motivated statement, just to drum up support for Tinubu, because 2027 election is coming. However, I feel like such statements should be backed by facts and statistics, because if you just anybody can make a statement.
And even if it is true, most Nigerians won't believe it because it's coming from. Yes.
And it's also coming from a group calling themselves Tinubu Media Force. That is a red flag already. I'm fond of using the word red flag, but indeed it is a red flag already. And the fact that people don't even trust government sources. I mean, imagine the minister for this thing or whatever. Imagine the minister of Interior coming out and saying this. Nigerians still won't believe, because they'll say, you're in the government, you're not the one that will tell us. So, and peradventure that the news is true, then it is welcome. But so far, I don't know anyone who knows anyone that has come back from the market and said, oh, food prices have actually dropped. I still bought it the same price I bought last year. So what's going on here?
Exactly.
What are they saying?
Just like you said, they should have come up with, you know, facts. They should have said a bag of rice is now so price, unlike before. But now there was no any, you know, fact backing up the news. And you know, a lot of Nigerians do say this thing, that you could hear things like this on the news, either radio or television. But when you go to the market, when you're facing reality, the market price is always different from that of the news stories. So it shouldn't be so. Okay, now, I don't know. I would have asked you, but you just said now that you are not aware of this. You don't know how to relate to this information given to us here.
You can go ahead and ask the question anyway.
No, I was about asking you. I've already answered. If food prices, if they are truly easing, I mean the prices of food, are they truly easing? Okay, is this just another case of political groups confusing, selective data with the daily reality Nigerians face in the markets. That was what I was.
Oh, now that just brings up another point. That brings up another point because we need to understand the data. You know, we need to understand data and reality. Data can say one thing and reality says the other.
Another.
This is data. Data can be sourced at any point. Look at the unemployment data. The way unemployment was being measured in Nigeria, they used a different system entirely before. And during Tinubu's era, they changed the system. Now, based on the new system of calculating unemployment data, they said unemployment has dropped by 4%. But the reality is that millions of young graduates are still unemployed. So how has it dropped by 4%? But according to the data, to their calculations, it has dropped to 4%. So in a country with 4% unemployment, and yet hundreds of millions of youths are unemployed, you will know that the reality does not match the data. So it's the same thing with the price. Political groups confuse selective data. And why is it called selective data? Because the means of calculating, there are different ways of calculating data. Do you know that that same data of unemployment that was calculated to be like, oh, unemployment is now at 4% in Nigeria, there's another way you will calculate it and you will see that unemployment is at 65%.
Yes.
So we don't use data, we use the reality on ground. You have to know what the common man is going through. So a lot of our governments, they are out of touch with reality actually, because their position it cushions them against the adverse effect of the economy. It cushions them against, they don't go to market. They have people who run errands for them. Look at our senators, they get hardship allowance, wardrobe allowance, transport allowance.
Apart and each of these money, getting those stuff for them, they can afford it no matter the cost.
Each of this pay, all these allowances they are getting is in millions of naira. It's not in thousands of naira. Then the common citizens are getting thousands of naira. They go to the market, they have to buy this, buy that, pay that. They have to string their belt, they have to tighten their belt, they have to go fasting in order to be able to afford some essentials. And then that senator, that minister who is getting all these cushions in the name of allowances is now going to come up and say, according to data, this price is this. He is out of touch with reality, of course. So that is what happens.
Now I'm talking about data and then reality. How do we separate genuine economic recovery from propaganda when pro-government groups are the loudest voices pushing this narrative?
And that is why we need independent fact checkers. We need independent fact checkers that the people can rely on, that the people can trust. The government doesn't even need to bring them up. You and I and every citizen can be an independent fact checker. When such news comes up and it is misguiding, it is misinformation, and it's trying to spread propaganda, what you should do. And this is not just if it's pro-government, it can also be anti-government groups. Anti-government groups too, they spread propaganda, they spread misinformation too. Sometimes they spread what is not in line with the reality on ground. When that happens, we as the independent fact checkers, we check the facts and we come out with our rebuttal and we say, we have investigated, we have actually checked the facts, and the reality on ground says this. When we have been proven to be credible, trustworthy, we will now become the vanguard. Yes, we become the vanguard against misinformation and propaganda to the common people, so that the common people can understand what is going on ground.
It's just like when they say you don't need a mirror or an eyeglasses to, check the time on your wristwatch.
Exactly.
When it is true, everybody will know in the market that things are now cheaper. I don't even think the government need to come out to announce that, okay, things are now very cheap in the market.
Exactly. That's
the populace will know. They will even be the one to, publicize it for the government. Okay, now let's just leave that story because we have a lot to talk about. One more story before we call it a day. Now we have a 60-year-old jailed 2 years for stealing power bank and chin-chin. Now, a 60-year-old woman by the name Mrs. Shade Akindeji has been sentenced to 2 years imprisonment for burglary and stealing in Ondo town, Ondo state. Mrs. Akindeji was convicted by Okeeda Division of the Magistrate Court sitting in Akure after she was found guilty of a two-count charge brought against her by the Ondo State Amotekun Co. The prosecutor, D.S. Shagbas, had told the court that the offenses were committed on June 29, 2025 at about 10 a.m. Now, he said the defendant broke into the residence of one Stella by removing the padlock and then stole a black sewing machine head, a power bank valued at 220,000, and a bowl of chin-chin. Now, this is where we're going to. People have been asking questions like, they should have, the sentence is just too much for the offense she committed. That's coming from some people, some netizens, Nigerians. They said it is too much. They should have just tempered justice with mercy, given her age. Do you understand? And some people have argued that if this woman were to be an elite, a political actor, a politician, that it wouldn't have ended this way. So now let's come to this. I don't know, does sentencing a 60-year-old woman to 2 years in prison for stealing chain, power bank reflect justice, or a justice system disconnected from social realities?
You see that I took a deep breath before I said anything.
Because I can understand.
This case is one of those cases where the lines are blurred between compassion and what the law says. And I'm a stickler for what the law says. I so much want this country to practice the rule of the law, but also in the enforcement of the law, in the enforcement of justice, or in the dispensation of justice, there must always be room for mercy, empathy, and understanding. You see, I added understanding because you can be empathic without actually being understanding. I can be empathic and say, oh, at her age, it should not be, oh, this punishment, but I may not understand why she's stealing at such a age. Because for a 60-year-old woman to even, I'm thinking with her age and everything, just the stress alone of her trying to break into, to boggle another person's home and steal. The desperation, whatever she would have gone through, I am now being understanding of that. I'm not sympathetic towards it, but I am understanding of it because no crime deserves sympathy, but every crime should be understood. So what could have led her to it? Now that she was caught and the items recovered, what was the appropriate punishment? Was it imprisonment? Or could there have been another way that the justice system of the nation could have, punished her while rehabilitating her? I feel like it should have been the most important thing, because for a 60-year-old woman to be driven by desperation to such dire straits, it must have meant that her situation must have been so dire.
Consider the items, even the sewing machine head. Who knows whether she wanted to go into,
No, she sold the items according to the news report. She sold the items, meaning that she needed money. She needed money. So it's to me, in this case, I would say poverty. I say this is poverty induced. This is a poverty induced crime, and unfortunately, the law is no respecter of persons. The law took its course. But I believe that justice could have been more tempered with mercy, because a woman of that age in prison is not going to help her, neither is it going to rehabilitate her in any way. While it may put fear in her, but 2 years in there, it might kill her. It might kill her. I believe that the justice should have been tempered with mercy, in that she could have been sent to a rehabilitation center where she could have still learned skills. She would have been rehabilitated, but she would have learned skills that would help her be a better citizen, that might even put food on her table when she leaves the rehabilitation center. That is what I think, and that is what I believe with this case. So
that could have been the reason for her also stealing the change, because I don't know what.
In my opinion, it reflects a justice system that is disconnected from social realities.
So how do we? Let's talk about the speed.
But it does not mean that the justice system was wrong.
Okay.
It was just that it was disconnected from social realities.
But then, how do we explain the speed and the severity of this judgment when corruption cases involving billions drag on for years? That's why I said earlier that Nigerians have been asking questions like, why? Is it because she is poor? She's from a poor background? What if it was involving a
Well,
politician?
I
You
didn't
understand?
say I blame poverty because this is a poverty-induced crime. Didn't I say so? One of the things you have to understand is when cases of corruption, embezzlement, and things that involve our politicians, when it comes up like this, and I'm sure everybody will agree with me, these people have access to the best defenders and the best lawyers that money can get. So it drags on because you have a case where the state is trying to establish the guilt, and the lawyers are doing what they are good at, which is to argue the case, to prosecute and defend the case. So someone that has access to world-class lawyers, to the best of the best of legal practitioners, can model up a case however they want. This is just reality. And that is what the law says, because everyone, no matter how terrible the crime they are accused of, are innocent until proven guilty. And it is up to the state to prove their guilt or establish their guilt. And if they have lawyers that are very good, it's going to be hard for the state to establish that guilt unless there is irrevocable, there's evidence, we call it empirical evidence, and evidence that cannot be argued in any form again. And even then, the lawyers will still put up an argument. That is why such cases drag on. But when you look at a case, she might not even be able to afford the lowest tier of lawyers, which means that it is now the state that will assign
her with
a primary. And you know, most of the times, because of being underpaid and some other circumstances, these guys just wanna. I'm not blaming them. Neither am I saying that is how the case is. I'm just inferring based on the state of the economy and how things have always worked in this nation. This legal aid practitioner that is now given this kind of woman by the state, we just want the case to be over.
Okay, now you've been talking about poverty coupled with her age. Now, should poverty and age be considered? Should poverty and age be stronger considerations in sentencing? Or would that even encourage crime? Where should the justice draw the line?
That is a very good question, and it's a question that brings about good thoughts. This is what I will say, though. Like I said, the law is no respecter of any persons, and like I said, we cannot blame the justice system for sentencing this woman. That is, a crime warrants that sentence, but our age warrants that there should have been empathy, understanding. There should have been empathy and understanding, and mercy. That is compassion before the sentencing. Because the justice system does not need to draw a line. The justice system just has to be connected with social realities. And so it will be able to make a much more informed judgment. A much more informed judgment. I'm not saying the woman shouldn't be punished for her crime. You remember? I said, but she could have been sent to a rehabilitation center, not a prison. Prison is a rehabilitation center, but prison is a much more harsh kind of rehabilitation center. She could have been sent to a rehabilitation center where she would have, served out her time. But at the same time, she'll be able to pick up skills that will put food on her table. And she will no longer find herself going through that same desperation anymore. I feel like that would have been better, but because the justice system right now is disconnected from social realities, we're going to keep having harsher sentences without understanding or having compassion on the culprits of a crime, especially when they are poor.
All right, thank you so much. Because of our time, this is where we're drawing the line. Yes, this is where we're drawing the curtain. We want to say thank you to you for staying with us on the Confab. Yes, but don't go anywhere, because more programs will still be coming your way today. So stay loyal to STM Radio Vision. But before we wrap it up completely, my analyst here has, a parting remark to give to you.
Thank you very much.
Quick one,
Thank you very much, esteemed viewers. As we wrap up, we'd like us to remember that policies, reforms, and judgments must always ultimately be measured by how they affect real lives. Thank you for listening. Let's keep asking the hard questions. And I hope that you keep following us on STM Radio Vision. I hope that you subscribe, you like, and you share our posts. Thank you.
All right, that's just it. Please do also follow us on our social media handles, on Facebook at STM Radio Vision, on YouTube at STM Studio. Thank you very much. Until we come your way again, may I still remain Chidinma, Abel, and
Ohunayo, Ajiboye.
Bye for now.